For the first time in 47 years, America and Iran are fighting each other directly. No proxies, no shadow war, open war. But the enemy America's actually fighting isn't a typical country. It's one force inside Iran. A force that controls the missiles, the proxies, the oil, and the government itself. 47 years ago, it didn't exist. This is the story of how a paranoid Ayatollah's street militia became the most dangerous military power in the Middle East. To understand the IRGC, you have to go back to February 1979. The streets of Tehran are unrecognizable. The Shah, the man who ruled from a peacock throne, has just left for exile. In his place, millions are flooding the streets, welcoming a frail 78-year-old cleric in a black turban. Ayatollah Khomeini has returned from 15 years abroad, and he is about to hijack a revolution. Khomeini isn't celebrating. He looks at the Artesh, Iran's regular military, and sees an army trained and equipped by the Americans. He remembers 1953 when the CIA used that same Iranian military to overthrow Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. The lesson 1953 taught every Iranian leader who came after is simple. In this country, a Western-trained army does not belong to you. It belongs to Washington, and Khomeini is terrified. These men in uniform will prove the lesson true a second time to him. So Khomeini builds his own army, men whose loyalty isn't to the nation but to him and his vision of an Islamic Republic. On May 5, 1979, he creates them, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. In these early days, they don't look like an army. They are street thugs, radicalized students, and neighborhood toughs. No uniforms, no ranks. They roam Tehran in pickup trucks, carrying looted weapons, crushing protests, enforcing the new Islamic dress code, silencing dissent, the blunt instrument of Khomeini's paranoia. The Artesh watches them with disdain. These aren't soldiers, they say. They're zealots. But zealotry is exactly what Khomeini wants. Across the border, Saddam Hussein has been watching. He sees the chaos, the purged army, these ragged street fighters, and he sees an opening. On September 22, 1980, he sends his tanks across the border. The invasion does not go as Saddam planned. For 8 years, the Iran-Iraq war turns into something out of the First World War. Trenches, barbed wire, mustard gas. The IRGC has no training to fight a conventional war, so it fights an unconventional one. The IRGC mobilizes the Basij, a volunteer militia of the faithful. Thousands of young men and boys, some as young as 12, are sent charging across Iraqi minefields as human minesweepers. Widespread reports describe these children being given small plastic golden keys to wear around their necks, the promise that if they die in battle, the key unlocks the gates of paradise. The slaughter is unimaginable, but it works. Iran pushes Iraq back across the border. It's in this war that a young IRGC officer from Kerman province makes his name. Qasem Soleimani, a construction worker's son, early 20s, lean, intense, leads reconnaissance missions deep behind Iraqi lines. He earns a reputation for fearlessness and strategic brilliance. Remember this name. He will become the most powerful military figure in the Middle East. While Iran is still fighting Iraq, Khomeini decides the revolution must be exported. In 1982, the IRGC sends men to Lebanon. There they find a disenfranchised Shia population and pour in ideology, training, and money. They build a new Lebanese militia from scratch. They call it Hezbollah, the Party of God. To run operations like this, the IRGC creates a specialized branch, the Quds Force. Quds is Arabic for Jerusalem. The IRGC names its foreign arm after a destination. Its mission: spread the revolution beyond Iran's borders. Hezbollah is the Quds Force's first and most successful project. It will not be the last. By the time the war ends in 1988, the cost to Iran is staggering. Hundreds of thousands dead, a generation traumatized. But the IRGC that emerges is no longer a ragtag militia. It is a massive, battle-hardened military machine, it has tasted power, it has tasted blood, and the guns have fallen silent on the border. But inside Iran, the real conquest is about to begin. June 1989. Khomeini dies. His successor, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, owes his entire authority to the men with guns. And the IRGC collects on that debt. In December 1989, Khamenei signs a decree creating the IRGC's own construction company, Khatam al-Anbiya. On paper, it is about rebuilding a country shattered by war. In reality, it is the beginning of an empire. The IRGC pours concrete. It builds dams, highways, airports, oil pipelines. Within a decade, it is the largest contractor in the Middle East. Then it moves into oil, banking, telecoms, mining, smuggling. By the 2000s, the IRGC controls roughly half of Iran's oil exports, tens of billions of dollars a year, much of it off the books. It answers to no parliament, only the Supreme Leader, a state within a state. And this is what makes the IRGC different from any other military in the region. A normal army depends on the government for its salaries. If the civilians want it gone, they cut the budget. The IRGC funds itself. It cannot be dissolved without dissolving half the Iranian economy. Khomeini built an army to protect himself from a coup. His successors inherit a force that is coup-proof, because nobody can afford to turn it off. 1998. Qasem Soleimani, the same officer who led reconnaissance behind Iraqi lines in the war, is promoted to run the Quds Force. He is 41, quiet, austere. He wears no medals. He gives no speeches. He doesn't stand behind podiums. What he does is build the network. In Lebanon, the Quds Force expands Hezbollah into a professional military. It funds Shia militias in Iraq. It arms Hamas in Gaza. Years later, it will arm the Houthis in Yemen, a web of proxies, all answering to one man in Tehran, March 2003. The United States invades Iraq and removes Saddam Hussein, Iran's worst enemy. Overnight, the country Iran fought for 8 years becomes an open chessboard. This is the single largest strategic gift Iran has ever received, delivered for free by its greatest adversary. The regime that spent the 1980s bleeding against Saddam now inherits his country without firing a shot. Soleimani seizes it. He floods Iraq with money, weapons, and operatives. The country becomes his training ground. His engineers build a new armor-piercing roadside bomb in Iranian factories, the EFP, the explosively formed projectile, and smuggle it across the border. Iran-backed militias will kill at least 600 American troops in Iraq. In 2008, Soleimani sends a message to the American commander, General David Petraeus. He writes, "I control Iran's policy for Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, and Afghanistan." By the late 2000s, it isn't a boast, it's a map. By the mid-2010s, Soleimani has built something the Middle East has never seen. From Tehran across Iraq and Syria into Lebanon, 1,800 kilometers of militia-controlled territory, all under his command. Iraqi militias hold one segment. Assad's forces, propped up by Iranian support, hold another. Hezbollah holds the third, right to the Israeli border. The Quds Force has become an empire. Soleimani is its face. January 3rd, 2020. Just after 1 a.m., Soleimani's plane lands at Baghdad International Airport. He steps off to meet an Iraqi militia commander. A black SUV is waiting. But so is an American MQ-9 Reaper drone circling high above the runway. The order has come from President Donald Trump. Hellfire missiles tear through the convoy. Qasem Soleimani is dead. Millions flood Tehran for the largest funeral since Khomeini himself. 5 days later, Iran fires ballistic missiles at US bases, wounding over 100 American troops. But killing the man does not kill the network. Khamenei appoints Ismail Qaani, Soleimani's quiet deputy, the next day. The machine keeps running, for now. To understand what happens next, you have to understand what 47 years of IRGC rule has done inside Iran. It has hollowed out the economy. The IRGC's empire pays dividends to its commanders, not to ordinary Iranians. Decades of sanctions, triggered largely by the Quds Force's foreign operations, have crushed the middle class. Inflation routinely runs above 40%, and it has tried to rule a modern society with 7th-century social codes. In 2009, millions marched in the Green Movement after a stolen election. The regime shot them down. In 2017 and 2019, fuel protests. The regime shot them down. In 2022, Mahsa Amini was beaten to death by morality police for showing her hair, sparking the largest uprising since 1979. The regime shot that down too. Each time, the pressure returned. By 2026, it has nowhere left to go. Winter 2026. Iran erupts. Millions take to the streets in every major city. Women burn headscarves. Workers strike. Bazaars close. It is the largest coordinated protest movement since the 1979 revolution itself. Only this time, the target isn't the Shah. It's the Islamic Republic that replaced him. The IRGC turns its guns inward. Iran's own health ministry later reports tens of thousands killed in the first 48 hours of the crackdown. Mass arrests, internet shutdowns, summary executions. The force, built in 1979 to protect the revolution from its own people, is now fighting those people in open streets. Then the confrontation goes external. But the external war had begun 3 years earlier. In October 2023, Hamas attacked Israel from Gaza, 1,200 Israelis killed in a single day. Within days, the rest of the network activated. Hezbollah opened a second front from Lebanon. The Houthis opened a third from Yemen. In September 2024, Israel killed Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, with 80 bombs on his Iranian-built Beirut bunker. Then, on June 13, 2025, more than 200 Israeli aircraft strike 100 sites across Iran in a single, coordinated attack. By the end of the day, the IRGC's commander, Hossein Salami, is dead. So is Iran's Chief of Staff, Mohammad Bagheri. So is the head of the IRGC Aerospace Force, Amir Ali Hajizadeh. So is Gholam Ali Rashid, who runs Khatam al-Anbiya. And so is Ismail Qaani, the man who replaced Soleimani 5 years earlier. Iran's nuclear scientists, Tiranchi and Abbasi, are killed at Natanz, Fordow, and Arak. Khamenei replaces them all in days. The machine keeps running. 8 months later, in February 2026, the United States and Israel launch an even larger second decapitation. Within hours, Supreme Leader Khamenei himself is dead. So is the new head of the IRGC. So is Iran's defense minister. The IRGC fires back. An American F-15 is shot down inside Iranian airspace. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. The war runs for roughly 40 days. Iran launches strikes on American bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE, expanding the conflict across the Gulf. A ceasefire is brokered, fragile, in April. Negotiations are ongoing with the elements of the regime that remain. The IRGC has lost its supreme leader, its commander, and much of its senior officer corps, but the network hasn't disappeared. It has fractured, and its surviving commanders are deciding what comes next. 47 years ago, Khomeini built the IRGC because he was afraid his own army would overthrow him. It never did. Instead, the force he built to protect a revolution spent half a century exporting it, and now stands, fractured, at the end of it. When America and Iran finish this war, the question isn't whether the IRGC survives. It's what replaces it. The network that took 40 years to build, Hezbollah's tunnel systems, Iraqi militia financing, Houthi missile factories, Hamas command links, doesn't dissolve cleanly when its commanders die. It either fragments under whoever inherits Iran, or it becomes the leverage a new government uses to negotiate its own legitimacy. The Iranians on those streets are trying to write the answer themselves, but they've been trying since 2009, and every time they were alone. Without sustained outside support, the most likely outcomes are another military faction taking power or a regional empire no single capital controls. With it, Iranians could end up, for the first time since 1979, with a government they actually chose. Which one defines the next half-century of the Middle East?